Today, I'll be showing you how to create exclusive doors for group members, which includes if they're in the group or even a certain rank they have in the group. Then, I'll be showing you team-only doors, and finally, I'll be showing you how to make ones for players that you choose. If you're tired of listening to long tutorials, make sure to check the important links section in the description if you want a model that contains everything I show in this video, which you can then add through the toolbox. I will add comments so you can understand what everything does. If you get stuck, you can always come back to watch the video. Now if you've stayed, I'll walk you through the process. To start, enable the Explorer, Properties, and Toolbox if you need it through the View tab at the top left. It's these three buttons over here. Once you've done that, head on over to the Explorer, hover over the workspace, click the plus button and add in a part. Now we can click on this part and go into the Properties section. I'm going to scroll down and make sure that the door is anchored so that it doesn't fall if someone touches it. And I'm going to change the size to my liking so you can change it to however it matches with your game. So I'm going to change it to 30, 20, 2. And then I am going to move this over here just so we can have all three doors lined up later on. Also make sure to hover over this part and add a script into it so we can change that later on. Now, go on over to the Starter GUI, click the plus button, and add in a Surface GUI. By doing this, it'll allow us to have text on the door that will be different depending on the player. Once you have this, make sure that you do this before anything else, and that would be going into the Properties section, clicking on the one that says Adornee, and then clicking on the part that you want this Surface GUI to be on. Because since this is in the Starter GUI, it won't be physically inside of the door, like what you might normally do in other circumstances. And now from here, click the plus button on the Surface GUI, add a text label into it, and along with this, make sure to add a local script, which we will also use later on. And now if you don't see the text on the door, you can either rotate the door or you can click on the Surface GUI, go down to where it says face and change it from front to whichever one matches. So for this one, it would probably be back. So yeah, now you can see we have the text label up over there. So now I'm going to click on the text label. I'm going to change its background transparency over here to 1 so we don't see anything right behind it and that we just see the door. I'm going to scroll down some more. I'm going to change its size to 1, 0, 1, 0. So that takes up the entirety of the door. And then I'm going to scroll down even more. I'm going to click this button that says text scaled so that it will scale accordingly. And then I'm going to change the text stroke transparency, which is the little outline around the text so that it looks more bold. And now that we have this, we can duplicate this door along with the Surface GUIs just so that we have the other ones ready for the next parts of the video. You don't need to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to do it just so that we don't have to recreate everything every single time. If you're tired of listening to long tutorials, make sure to check the important links section in the description if you want a model that contains everything in this video, which you can then add through the toolbox. I will add comments so you can understand what everything does. If you get stuck, come back to watch this video. Now if you've stayed, I'll walk you through the scripting process. Now that we have the doors and text on them that I showed in the first part of the video, and don't worry, I know I didn't explain how to change the text on the doors yet, but we'll get into that shortly. If you're just starting here, make sure that you click on the Surface GUI that we have inside of the Starter GUI, click on Adornee, and then click on the part in the workspace that you want this to be attached to. Otherwise, none of the text will show up properly. Afterwards, go into the local script that we have inside of this Surface GUI and open it up. And don't forget to rename everything else just so that it's easier to organize and keep track of. To start, we can get rid of this, and we can create some variables so that's easier to reference other things in the game. I'm going to reference the player's service, and then I'm going to reference the local player afterwards. So this is going to be so that we can access or reference the player that joins the game. Now create a variable for your group. The number that you put in for this section will be the number that you find in the web address bar when you go to the page of your group. So I'm going to put mine here. I think it's this. Afterwards, reference where the door is in your game. So in this case, I have it inside of the game, which is inside of the workspace, and then it is called group door. So I'm going to do game.workspace.groupDoor. And then finally, we'll reference the text label so that we can change it more easily in the script. So I'm going to say script.parent because we have the script over here. Its parent is whatever is holding it. So that's the Surface GUI. And inside of the Surface GUI, we have what is called group label, what I called it. So then I can type in group label. Make sure you change this to the directory and the name that you have set up for the text label. If you got this from the model in the description and you put it into the right spot, this should be fine how it is. Now before anything else, make sure to add this repeat wait until player so that the rest of the script below it won't continue running until the local player has loaded in. And this is just because this particular script is not going to include a function and it will be activated right away when the player joins. And now the first option is to check if someone is in the group. So to do this, we're going to type in local check, which is going to be the name of our variable, is equal to player : is in group. And then in parentheses, we're going to type in group. And I'm going to change this to lowercase c. And do make sure that if you are using different variables, or if you've added different capitalization, that you have it exactly the same. So in this case, I have a lowercase g for group, and I have that here too. And if those things don't match properly, then the script might not work. And what this is going to do is it's going to check the local player, which we have set up here, and it's going to check if they are in the group that we also referenced right here. So now if I say if check, so if the player is in the group, then something is going to happen. So I'm just going to move this over here and indent. And if this happens, so if they are in the group, then we're going to change the text label. So then we could say then label.text, because if we go into the text label over here and we scroll down into the properties, the text that is actually shown on it is defined by this property. So we're going to make it equal something else. And now we're going to make sure that this is in parentheses and also inside of quotation marks because it's a string value, so it's going to show text. So we're going to say welcome, and then afterwards I'm going to put these two dots. This is what's called concatenation. You don't need to use it, but I'm going to just so we can put the player's name on there. So then I'm going to put player.name, and that'll just make it so that if they are in the group, then it's going to change the text to say welcome and then their name. And it won't show like that for anyone else. So it'll be local to that player. But now if someone isn't in the group, we can change it to say something different. Like if we wanted to get them to join the group in order to join, or in order to go through the door. So now on another line, I'm going to say else if not check. So if it isn't what this is, so basically if they aren't in the group, and then I'm going to say then label.text is equal to, and we'll just say player.name, and then the two dots for concatenation. Please join the group to enter. But now this is just the first option. So let's say you wanted to check for their role in the group or their rank. And if you want to do that, make sure you get the role ID from your group, which can be found by clicking the three dots at the top right of the group, clicking configure group, roles at the left side, and then looking at the number in the rank section. So we can now do this. Instead of saying is in group, we can say get rank in group, and again make sure it's capitalized properly, and then put the group inside. So then I could say if check is greater than or equal to role or rank number 3 in the group, and you can change these numbers to match however yours is, then we could say welcome.playerName. And then instead of saying else if not check, we could put it to a specific rank. So I could say else if check is less than or equal to 2, then it's going to go to this instead. And let's say you wanted a range, like you wanted 10 to 20, You can use number ranges, which I'll just provide in the model in the description that has everything else in this video too, just so we save some time. But now that we have this, we need to make sure that the group door is also checking for the same things, or else having this here is just going to change the text and people aren't even going to be able to walk through it. So click on the door and go into the script and we can change it from here. So we need to make sure it lets the right people in when they touch it. So we're going to reference some of the same things. So local players equals game get service players. And we don't need the local player in this case because this is a normal script and not a local script. So now I can also reference the group ID, and I've already forgotten it, so I'm just going to get it from here. And then we can reference the door. So I'm going to say game.workspace.groupDoor. And also create a variable that you can call whatever you want, but I'm going to call it debounce. And you could preferably make it false or true, either or. And this is just going to be like a placeholder role so that we can put it into the script in order to prevent people from spamming door inputs and either making it break or trying to glitch through it. And just in case you don't want to reference the door like this, I only did it because there could be a large skill range of people watching this. You could also say script.parent since this script is directly inside of the door. So that's a pure preference if you'd like. So now from here, I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call it open. And I'm going to put a parameter inside of it, which is called hit. And since we are going to be checking when someone touches this door, whatever touches it is going to be passed into the function through this. So I'm going to go over here, hit enter. And before I start writing any of the rest of the script, I'm going to say door.touched because this is the door script.parent. And I'm going to connect it to this function. So I'm going to write the name inside and it's going to be open. And now make sure you use a capital C for connect to. If you use a lowercase one, that's the depreciated version or deprecated, whatever word it is. And it's better to get in a habit of remembering these things. And now that we have this, we can do things that are similar to the local script that we had over here. We will be checking for their rank in the group, but we'll be doing it in a slightly different way. Because we don't have full access to their character just from their, or to their player just from their character touching it, we're going to have to do a few things. So to start, I'm just going to say if debounce is equal to, and the double equal sign is checking if the value is equal to what we put here or not, and a single equal sign is making it equal to that value. So if debounce is equal to false, then debounce is equal to true. So we're going to turn it to true. And this is just so that if someone touches it over and over again, that's going to have to wait until debounce becomes false again in order to continue. So if this is the case, then we're going to define something inside of the character so that we know what's touching it. So I'm going to say local hum is equal to hit.parent find first child, and then in quotation marks here I'm going to put humanoid. And now what this is doing is that whatever is touching the door, which is basically, it could be the character's arm, it could be their leg, we're going to get the parent of it. And that's because if we go over into like my character over here and I open it up, let's say I got my left arm, that is inside of my character model. So the parent of the left arm is my character, and it also shows this in the properties section. It says parent strong biggie man 9. So then if I go back into the script here, then I could say, and I'll actually move this another line down, if hum, so if it is a humanoid, then I'm going to create another variable which is going to be another check. So I'm going to say local check, and in this case I'm just going to use the get rank in group thing. So get rank in group, actually check is equal to players get player from character. So we're going to be getting the player that touched this from their character, and then we're going to say hit.parent. So then now on the next line we can say if check, I'm sorry, this is probably really sloppy, get rank in group is greater than or equal to 3 like we did earlier, then door.transparency is equal to 0.5. Let me move this over. Door.canCollide is equal to false, so they can walk through it. And you can change these values to whatever you'd like. If you don't know what these values are, you can always click on the part and then find this over here in the properties section and experiment with it to your own liking. And then I'm just going to add a wait 3, so it's going to wait 3 seconds after doing this. And then we're just going to change it back to its original properties. So I'm going to change the transparency back to 0. And I'm going to change the door.canCollide to true so that people can collide with it. And then now we can go over here and do our else if, actually not there, else if check get rank in group is less than or equal to 2, then actually I'll move this up. Door dot, actually no, we won't be changing the door. We're just going to make their character's health equal to 0, and you can always change this to whatever you'd like. I'm just going to do hum.health is equal to 0 because we define their humanoid as this up there. And now make sure to add the final if then, or the final end for each of the if-then statements, and then the function. You need one end for each of those, and this does not apply to else-if statements, by the way. And now we have to change the debounce back to false so that the function can run again. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to say wait, turn the debounce to false, and now we should be good. So if I go over here into the game, I hit play, and now when I go over here, the text changed to welcome to my name, and I forgot to add a space there, but that's okay. And when I walk into it, it's going to let me through. And if I go over here and I click on this button right here, it's going to show what it looks like on the server. So on the server, it's just showing group door. But now if it was another player in here, it would be showing what we put earlier, which would be to tell them to please join the group to enter. And just to show you this, I'm going to change the group ID to be off by 1, and also with this one. And then now if I hit play, it's going to say that I need to join the group. And then when I walk into it, it's going to kill my character. And now that we have this, let's move on over to the team door section. If you're tired of listening to long tutorials, make sure to check the important links section in the description if you want a model that contains everything in this video, which you can then add through the toolbox at the side of your screen. I will add comments into it so you can understand what everything does. If you get stuck, you can always come back to watch the video. And now if you've stayed, I'll walk you through the process. Now that we have the doors and the text on them that I showed in the first part of the video, make sure that you go over here to the surface GUI, go over to the properties, and make sure that the adornee, and you can click it, has the part selected that you want the text to show up on. So you could just click it and then click on the part. Otherwise, your text won't show up properly. And also make sure to rename these so it's easier to organize. And now that we have that, let's go on over into the team door GUI, and inside of the local script, we can get rid of print hello world and get started. Start by creating variables to reference other things in the game. I'm going to reference the players service once again, like earlier in the video. So I'm going to say game::get service players. And then because this is a local script, I'm going to get the local player. So I'm going to say players.localPlayer. And now we are going to create some variables for the team that you want this door to be for. So we are also going to reference the team service so that we can get all of the teams much quicker. So now in this case, I'm going to choose the team for this one, which I believe is set to team OK. So OK is the name of my team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say local OK is equal to teams::wait for child OK. And now this is going to wait for the team called OK. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to say .teamColor. So this is going to get the team color value of that team. And in order to find this, click on the team, go into properties, and you'll see it right here. And the reason we're doing this is because the player's team color has to be the same team color as the team in order to be put onto that team. And now do take note that this is completely different than brick color, which you can find over here at the top part of the properties section in a part, even though they are referenced kind of in the same way at times. So now from here, we're going to reference the door and the text label. So I'm going to say local door is equal to game.workspace. And because this team door is over here, so inside the game, inside the workspace, and we have the team door. So I'm going to say game.workspace.teamDoor because that's what I've named it. And then I'm going to say local text or local label is equal to script.parent.teamLabel. And that's because this local script is inside of the Surface GUI, and then inside of that Surface GUI is the team label. And now after this, make sure to add something that says repeat wait until player. And this is going to wait for the local player to load into the game before continuing with the rest of the script, and I'll explain why we need this later on. So now we can create a function that will check the player's team, and you could do that by saying local function and the name that we'll call it. So I'm just going to call this team door open. And then I'm going to add a parameter inside called player, which is the data that will be passed through when this function is activated. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next line, and I'm going to create a variable that will check for the team color of the player that joins. So I'm going to say local check is equal to player.teamColor. So now what I can do on the next line is I could say if check is equal to OK, or I'll just change this to say my team just so that it's easier to look at. So this is basically saying if the team color of the player is equal to the team color of the team, then we can make something happen. So we can go to the next line and say then, and now we can change what we have on the text label. So I'm going to say then label.text, because it's the text property inside of the label over here at the very bottom. That changes what shows up on the Surface GUI, and we're going to make this equal something else. So I'm going to say welcome, comma, and add a space, and I'm going to add 2 dots, and this is going to be for concatenation, and you don't need to use this, but I'm going to use this to show the player's name. I'm going to say player.name, and I'm going to do this. So when this function is run, it's going to check if the player's team color is equal to that of the team we have set up over here. And if that's the case, it's going to change the text only on their side to say welcome and then their name. But if someone isn't on that team, then we can say something else. So I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to say else if, or actually I'll just say else. So this is going to be anything that doesn't match this statement over here. So they could be on any team or any brick color and team color. So then I'll just say else if that's not the case, then label.text is equal to enemy team's door. But even though we have this right now, it's not going to run the function. So afterwards, we're going to add some lines. So to start, I'm going to call the function by saying its name. So in this case, it's team_door_open, and I'm going to add these parentheses afterwards. And this is one way that you can run a function. And that's why we're having it wait until the player loads so that the script will be able to properly check the player's team color. Because if we just have this run the function before the player has loaded in, it's not going to recognize the player. And in addition to this, let's say that someone spawns on this team, but then they go on over to another team. How is it going to run the function again if it only runs once? So we're going to add an event. So we're going to say player : get property changed signal, and then we're going to put in parentheses, and I messed that up, signal, and we're going to put team. And now what this is going to do is that whenever the local player changes teams, we're going to connect it with the function. So I'm going to say : connect and make sure it's a capital C. And then I'm going to put the name of the function inside, and not teams. I'm going to say team_door_open. And you don't need these extra set of parentheses just for this case. So now what this is going to do is that once the player has loaded in, it's going to run the function that will check their team color. And if it's the same as the team we have set up here, it's going to change it to this text. And if not, it's going to change it to this one. And then when the player changes teams, it's going to run the function again just to make that check again. But now that we have this, the door isn't going to be working yet until we go on over and modify the script that is inside of this door. It'll be similar to the other door that I showed right before this part of the video, so I'm going to bring most of that over. So I'm going to be explaining these things if you didn't watch the earlier part of the video. And even then, if you didn't, or if you don't want to go through and copy all of this still, the model that has this in the description, along with everything else that I'm showing in this video, will be in the important links section. And it'll have comments that'll show what's going on if you need that extra guidance. So in this case, we're referencing the players again. And then just like the local script we had over here, we are referencing the teams and then our team. In addition to this, we're referencing the door as script.parent, since this, and actually it's in this one over here, since this team door script is inside of the door. And then we also have debounce, which is like an imaginary variable we created. That's almost just like a placeholder so that we can prevent the script from running too many times at once. And what this part is doing is that since this function will be run when someone touches the door, this part that says hit is going to be whatever touches the door. So what we're doing here is we're defining the word hum as the hit.parent, so whatever is holding that part. So let's say, if it was the arm of my character, since that is inside of my character, if we go over here into the properties and the data section, it'll say the parent is strong big E man 9. So that means that if that touches it, we are going to get the parent, which is the character. So now I can say if hum, so if it finds a humanoid inside of whatever touched it, then something will happen. So we're going to change this check to check for their team color in this case. So I'm going to say players, get player from character, hit dot parent, so it's going to get the player from the character that touched this. And now I can say, actually no, I'm going to add dot team color to the end of this, so we're going to get the player's team color. So if check is equal to what we have set as my team up here, is equal to my team. So if the player's team color is equal to the team color we have set, then the door's transparency is going to change to this. People will be able to walk through it, and only them, or anyone else who is also on the same team. It's going to wait 3 seconds, and then it's going to go back to normal. You can always adjust these properties if you need to. And if that's not the case, so we can say else if not check, or actually we could say else if check is not equal to my team, then we can change the humanoid health to 0 so that person can't walk through it. And then we have an end for each if-then statement, along with one for the function at the top. And take note, you don't need an end statement, or an end, for an else if then statement. And now that we have this, I can go over and test this. So if I hit play, the text on it's going to change to say welcome and my name, and it's going to let me walk through. But as soon as I step onto another team, it's going to say that it's an enemy's team door, and once I touch it, I'll die. So then it's going to do that every time I respawn. So even if I go over here to a new team, it's going to do the same thing. And as soon as I step back onto there, because it's getting the team changed event inside of the local script we have over here, it's going to check it again, and then it will change the text. And now that we have that, we can move on to the final player-only door for people that you choose. If you're tired of listening to long tutorials, make sure to check the important links section in the description if you want a model that contains everything in this video, which you can then add through the toolbox. I will add comments so you can understand what everything does. If you get stuck, come back to watch this video. Now, if you've stayed, I'll walk you through the process. Now that we have the doors on the text on them that I showed in the earlier parts of the video, make sure that you go into the properties of the Surface GUI, click on Adornee over here, and make sure that you have selected the part that you want the Surface GUI to show up on, or else the text won't display properly. And now that we have that, we can open up the local script inside of this player door GUI and get started. Don't forget to rename things so that it's easier to organize and reference in the scripts. We need to start by creating variables to reference other things in the game. So just like all the other times, I'm going to reference the players service, which can be done by saying local players, or this variable can be whatever you want. And I'll say game get service players. And since it's a local script, I'm going to say local player is equal to players.local player so that we can find out the player that has this script. And it might be confusing, but don't worry because I'll still explain more. And now you want to create a table with the user IDs of the players you want to have access through this door. You can use their player names if you want, but since people can change their names but not their user ID, it's better to go with the user ID. You can find this number in the web address bar on their profile. If you use player names, make sure to have quotation marks around their names so that you can turn it into a string value that the script will read properly. So I'm going to say local allowed is equal to, and I'm going to do these brackets, and then I'm going to put a list of user IDs. So I'm going to put mine, which is this, and then I'm going to put ROBLOX, and then I'll just put 2 along with it. So then if this was a list of names instead, it would be local allowed is equal to, and then I would put strong biggie man 9, I would do comma, I would do ROBLOX, and then I think 2 is actually John Doe or Jane Doe, one of those. So then this is what it would look like instead. But if I were to change my name to something like Joe or whatever, then that means that this would no longer work unless you actually changed my name in here, but this one would still work because my user IDs remained the same. So I'm going to get rid of this one and I'm going to keep on going. So now I'm going to reference the door that people will be going through. So I'll say local door is equal to game.workspace.player door. And this is because the player door we have over here is inside of the workspace and the workspace is inside of the game. And now that we have this, I'm also going to reference the text label. So I'm going to say local label is equal to script.parent.player label. And this is because the script is over here in the player door GUI. So if I say script.parent, and as you can see here in the properties GUI, it says that's its parent. And then inside of this, one of its children is the player label. So we're going to reference it like that. And next, add this repeat wait, and then make sure you have the parentheses until player, so that the rest of the script doesn't continue to run until the player has loaded in. And now we are going to use a for loop to go through this table. So what I'm going to say is for I is equal to 1, comma, and then we could do the number of values we have in this. So I could do the hashtag or the pound sign allowed, which is the name of the table. And this basically means that we are going to start in index or position 1. So if we go on over to the table, this is position 1, this is position 2, and this is position 3. And this might be easier to explain with names, just in case, because I do have it labeled as 1 and 2. So I'm going to put some names in here instead, just for an example. So that means this is going to start in the first position, which is right here. And then it's going to end at the number of positions, I guess, we have inside of this table. So in this case, because there are 3 names, this is position 1, this is position 2, and this is position 3. So now I'm going to get rid of this and we can keep on going. So for I is equal to 1, number of allowed, we'll say do, and then I'll put wait 1 just so it waits 1 second before continuing. And then we can go on to the next line over here, and then we can add if allowed. Actually, let me use an indent or tab instead of spaces. If allowed, and I'll make this capital as well, and then I'll put in brackets right here, I is equal to player.user_id. So if the value, which is going to be the user ID in this case, so if the value in the position, so let's just say that it's on position 2, or well, I'll just say, we'll say it's on position 1. So if the value in position 1, which is this user ID, is equal to the local player's user ID, so the person who joined and has this script as part of their player, then we can make something happen. So if I say then label, so we can change the text, label.text is equal to, and then we'll put in parentheses, we'll say welcome, and we'll add a space, and then we'll add 2 dots, and we'll say player.name. And this is what's called concatenation, and this is just used so that we can put the player's name there. It has other uses, but I won't be going into that for this video. And you don't have to use this if you don't want to. So I'm just going to add 2 more dots, exclamation point. So now, once this runs, if the person that joins is in this list, it's going to change the text on the door to say welcome and then their name. But now, if someone isn't on the list, we'll just have it remain the same as what it was before. So I'm actually just going to go here, and because sometimes people don't want to know that it's either a secret door or to know that there's a list that you have to be on for it. So I'm just going to call it door smiley face. And now we're almost done. All we need to do is move on to the script that we put inside of the door earlier in the video. So to start, I'm going to reference the players again. So I'm going to say local players is equal to game get service players. And I don't need to reference the local player again, just because this is a normal script, so it's on the server, so it already has access to all the players. And now I'm going to get the table that we put over here, because this is going to do a secondary check to make sure that the person who's touching it is really on the list and they are allowed through the door. And I'm going to say local door is equal to script.parent, because once again the script is right inside of the door. And then I'm going to write a function, which is local function. I'm going to put the name of the function, so this is called open, and whatever runs this function, and in this case we're going to use an event to check when someone touches this door, whatever touches the door is going to be put through here. So let's say that it's the arm of a character over here. So that means over here, if I look at the left arm, if we were to print the value of whatever touched it, it would say left arm. And you'll see why this is important in a little bit, and it has to do with getting the parent of whatever touches the door. So now I'm going to go back into the script. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to add a placeholder variable, which you can name whatever you want, and I'm going to call it debounce. And this is just going to be used so that we can prevent too many inputs from being sent to the door at once so that people don't try to break it or glitch through. So I'm going to start with doing is saying if debounce is equal to false, and these double equal sign is checking if debounce is that value, well, a single equal sign is going to check, or is not going to check, it's going to make it equal to that. So if it's equal to false, then I'm going to make it equal to true, so that way the rest of the script is going to have to keep on going before someone is able to activate the function or have it go all the way through with it again. So now I'm going to move on to the next line, and I'm going to define a variable, and I'm going to say local hum is equal to hit.parent colon find first child humanoid. And now what this is saying is that, as I said earlier, whatever touches it, it's going to get its parent, and when in this case it's going to be our character, and it's going to find a humanoid inside there, which all characters have. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say local player is equal to the player's service colon get player from character, and then I'm going to type in hit.parent. And what this is doing is that it's going to get the player from the character who's touching it, and that way we'll be able to access their player ID. So now I'm going to go here and I'm going to say if hum, I'm going to indent it one more time, if hum, then we are going to go through the loop again. So I'm going to say for I is equal to 1, comma, the number of allowed, so the number of values we have over here in the table, do. So I'm going to go over here. Oh man, bunch of stuff. I'm actually going to move this over there. And then I'm going to have it do what we did in this part of the script over here. So I'm going to check if allowed I is equal to player.userid. Now I'm going to go over here, then, and wow, this does not look like it's indented right, but it'll do for now. Then door.transparency is equal to 0.5. I'll add this end here. Door.canCollide is equal to false, so that people aren't able to collide with it. And then we're going to add wait 3, so that it'll be 3 seconds before it turns back to its original values. And you can always, and not child added, I meant canCollide. You could always change these values to how you would like, and you can check them by clicking on the part over there in the workspace, going into the properties, and then messing with it if you'd like. And then now that we have this, I'm going to add another thing that will just say else. So if they are not on the list, then I'm just going to move that over here. We're going to change their humanoid's health to equal 0 so that they won't be able to get through. And now I'm going to change debounce over here back to false so that the function can continue. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to add a wait. Debounce is equal to false. And then at the very, very end, I'm going to say door.touched connect. And then I'm going to put the name of this function, which is open. So now whenever anything touches the door, it's going to run this function that's going to check if there's a humanoid in whatever touches it. If there is, then it is going to loop through the table that we have up here with the player user IDs, and it's going to check if the player that we got from the character over here, if their user ID matches any of them in the list, and if that's the case, the door is going to open, and then it's going to wait 3 seconds, it's going to go back to normal, and otherwise it's going to change the humanoid's health to 0, debounce is equal to false. And now we can go in and check this. And now if we go over here, you'll see that it's changed to say welcome and then my name. If I walk into it, I am completely fine. So if I want to go back in here really quick, I'm not sure why it ended up killing me there. Maybe I could change this section here just to be this for now. And if we go on over here and we change this to a different user ID, and I go back in and test it, it's not going to change to the right text. And I will still be able to walk through it, but that's just because I didn't change it inside of the door itself. So I kept this value the same right here. And I'll make sure to look into this part just to see what happened for the model that I'm going to put for this in the description below. And besides that, thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later.